we begin with this really tragic breaking news out of New Orleans this morning. 10 people are dead and at least 30 others are injured after a vehicle drove into a crowd in the French Quarter. Emergency officials say it happened overnight near Canal and Bourbon Street. You can see the scene right there. A lot of police activity overnight. We've been seeing ambulances, you see on your screen right there. Truly a frightening scene, as you can imagine. A number of New Year's revelers out and about on this New Year's Day, early morning, and then waking up to this news. The latest that we have from the New Orleans Ready, their emergency alert system, is that their 8th district, they're working on a mass casualty event. That is how they have described it so far. And again, we got that news just a matter of moments ago that at least 10 people have been killed and dozens more were injured. We're also learning some more information from eyewitnesses who have described some of the scenes, frankly, and some of the horror and panic after a vehicle slammed into the crowd. That's the word from some of the eyewitnesses. Kevin Garcia, 22 years old, spoke to CNN shortly after this incident. He said, "All I seen was a truck slamming into everyone on the left side of Bourbon Sidewalk. A body came flying at me," he said, adding that he also heard gunshots being fired. That's again from Kevin Garcia speaking with CNN just a little while ago. Another witness from Shreveport, Louisiana, Whit Davis, told CNN, "The incident happened while she was at a nightclub on Bourbon Street. Everyone started yelling and screaming." This is according to Whit Davis, "running to the back, and then we basically went into lockdown for a little bit. Then it calmed down, but they wouldn't let us leave." That's again from an eyewitness. This is Whit Davis from Shreveport, Louisiana, who said that she was there as this happened earlier this evening. You can see some of these frightening images on your screen of just a tremendous amount of law enforcement present. Again, on Canal and Bourbon Street, again from Whit Davis telling CNN, "When they finally let us out of the club, police waved us where to walk and were telling us to get out of the area fast. I saw a few dead bodies they couldn't even cover up and tons of people receiving first aid." Again, that stands with the information that we were learning, again, just in the past really 30 minutes or so. We learned that at least 10 people were killed and dozens more were wounded. We actually have some emergency audio from the emergency officials and the radio sound from the incident. I'm going to play it right now just so our viewers can take a listen.
Communications to engine 29 and all units heading towards Canal and Bourbon. We're going to move to Fireground Tourist. You're responding to a mass casualty incident. A vehicle ran through a crowd of people. There's multiple injuries, multiple casualties. They need you at Canal and Bourbon.
And again, we're following this breaking news, a tremendously troubling story out of New Orleans this morning. We're learning that 10 people are dead, at least 30 others are injured after a vehicle drove into a crowd in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Of course, the very famous, very populated, you can imagine, area, especially on New Year's Eve, going into the early morning hours of New Year's Day. I believe we have CNN senior law enforcement analyst Andrew McCabe joining us now. Andrew, I know that you're coming to the story fresh, and we're all learning information as it comes in right now. But again, just knowing that, as far as we know, a car drove into a crowd of people, killing at least 10. Andrew, give me your first thoughts. I mean, we've seen this type of incident in other parts of the world over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, we certainly have, Danny, and it's because of those other experiences with similar mass casualty events that we have to kind of, at this point, really keep our minds open to any possibility. I think first and foremost, of course, the first responders are trying to get an accurate assessment of the injuries and the fatalities and to tend to the people on scene, and that alone is a massive undertaking. Just getting the right assets to the scene can be very challenging in a place like New Orleans. Tough to move around there. You've got a lot of people, a lot of vehicles, a lot of potential obstructions. So they want to get as many ambulances and EMTs and medical personnel, fire personnel into that place as they can to just assess the damages and the injuries to people. But as you mentioned, we've seen in just in the last couple of months, and specifically thinking of the Christmas market attacks in Germany, that there are sometimes that incidents like this are intentionally created. Now, we don't know if that's the case with this. It could very well be someone who was incapacitated or intoxicated or something, went the wrong way with their vehicle, reacted terribly, and caused this by mistake. And that's probably how folks on the scene are thinking about this. But you have to keep in the back of your mind the possibility that this could have been an intentional event, someone who was in the act of protest or some with some sort of terrorist purpose. Again, we don't know that here yet. We haven't heard anything about the perpetrator of this mass casualty event. But folks on the scene have really got to keep an open mind as to what caused this and whether or not there are any other threats that we need to be concerned about.
Well, and it's interesting. I appreciate you saying that and kind of, setting the stage for us that we're still learning quite a lot about this particular incident, and there's still quite a lot we don't know. But again, you look at that Christmas market attack back in Germany, that, as we're learning, seemed to truly be intentional. But it was interesting. I was here in New York back on Christmas, and there was a story of a taxi cab hitting a couple of pedestrians, and it turned out that was, as you noted, in the realm of possibilities, that was someone who, according to police, was having a medical episode. I imagine those are two examples of the challenge of what law enforcement officers are looking at with something so terrible like this, in that it could either be, it could be anything at this point. That's really the situation. Andrew, I was also curious. I was describing some eyewitness interviews that CNN got just a little while ago. And I wanted your take on this because one person said that they thought that they might have even heard gunshots in the aftermath of this car driving through. Now, obviously, in chaos, you could hear a lot of things, but what would that potentially tell you if that were in fact the case, as a witness told us just a little while ago?
Yeah, I think you have to, obviously you want to hear what any witnesses have to say. You want to record all those statements right off the bat. But investigators know that eyewitness testimony in the middle of an attack or an incident like this can very frequently be kind of off base. And so you got to be very careful before you start drawing conclusions about whether or not something like that happened. It's very, very frequent that really most mass shootings, you'll have a couple of eyewitnesses who will say there were two shooters instead of one, or they were shooting in two different locations. And when we sort through all that after the fact, we come to find out that that was not the case, and that people sometimes mishear things and they react very strongly to things that might be the sound of gunshots. So we don't know yet, but we do know, if you think about intentional acts like this one, and the Christmas market attack in Germany is the most recent, but there have been very many of these back across time. There's been, I think, probably at least 3 Christmas market attacks in Germany that I can think of in the last 10 years or so. We've had attacks in the United States with vehicles in large crowds. You remember Saifullah Saipov, who drove a rental truck up the West Side Highway and onto the pedestrian park there, and used it to run over people. So, and in some vehicle attacks, I'm thinking of some in the United Kingdom several years ago, the attackers abandoned the vehicles and then continued their attacks on foot with knives or firearms, things like that. So it is a possibility, but again, we're really far from that. What we have is just the word of one eyewitness, hasn't been corroborated. Sure. We don't have any reporting on individuals with gunshot injuries at this point. So those are the sorts of things that investigators will want to see to try to corroborate that testimony or rule it out. And I should also say, Danny, we are in the age of video coverage pretty much everywhere. So I'm quite sure investigators are going back in identifying cameras that could provide relevant video to this attack and trying to trace back exactly kind of what led to it and where the perpetrator came from, how they drove, and just sort of piece things together in that way.